Rejoice always. Always rejoice. Yeah? Tell that to somebody who's poor and don't know where their next meal's coming from. Or to someone who's depressed about more things than just the weather. Maybe clinically depressed. Or someone who's brokenhearted, perhaps because of the loss of a loved one. Rejoice always. Or someone who is captive, maybe not just behind bars, but a prisoner of their own addictions, captive by their own emotions, which seem to be causing them to do things which are harmful to themselves and others. Tell that to them. And if we did, they might well look at us like, what planet are you from? Or they might say something like, you have no idea what I'm going through. Or they might say, get out of my face. It's not real. Rejoice always. Is that even possible? And if it is, I haven't quite achieved it myself. But to these very people that are described there, they are the ones to whom the good news is sent. Into Isaiah, where it says, take my glad tidings to the poor, to the depressed, to those who are brokenhearted and those who are prisoners. And you got to go, well, Well, you're right. Those are the ones who need the glad tidings brought to them. And those are the ones, like maybe us, who need to hear what John the Baptist has to say when he says, I came to testify to the light. I myself am not the light, but I testify to it. I want to point you to the light so that in your misery, in your darkness, you can see light which will get you through it all and be able one day to rejoice. Maybe not always, but a lot. A lot more than we are now. Excuse me. And so St. Paul kind of tells us how we can get there. First thing he says is, pray without ceasing. Well, there you go again. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing. How are we going to pray without ceasing? Well, that's not even a concern for those who have a tough time praying in the misery that they're in. I once asked a priest when I was a much younger priest, and he was known in our province to be a charismatic kind of a priest. He could pray at the drop of a hat and just pray all day long. It's just what he did was, he's really good. And then he had a heart attack, an open heart surgery. After all that, I asked him, I said, well, that down low, I bet it was easy for you to pray. He said, no, it wasn't. I could hardly pray. I needed people to pray for me, and I needed to learn how to pray differently. And I know that to be true. I know it to be true that when we are in the most misery, a guy might just have to turn to kind of like a mantra prayer and pray little things. Like, God, please help me. Or God, I cling to you. Or God, bring light to my darkness. And pray that over and over and over again. And to have other people pray for someone makes a difference. To get cards that say, I'm thinking of you and I am praying for you. And not that it makes everything all better right away, but what it does is open our hearts to the presence of God, admitting that God is there, that God has power, and we look to Him. We do all we need to do medically and surgically and all that stuff, but the healing that goes on is not just physical, it's also spiritual. It's in the heart. And opening our hearts in prayer, whatever way we can pray, even if it's only in little mantra prayers, it opens our heart to God and expresses our dependence upon Him. Pray. It's the first thing. The second thing he says, in everything give thanks. Here we go again. I'm supposed to thank God for what I'm undergoing right now? Come on. All right. Start with little things. Perhaps the guy's in the hospital, feeling miserable after surgery. Let's just say that might be true. And he decides that he's tired of his own misery, so he says stuff like this. Thank you. To the housekeeping person, to the nurse's aide, thank you. To the lab tech that comes in to draw blood one more time, thank you. To the doctor that comes in, thank you. To the visitor, the chaplain that comes in, thank you. To people that come, thank you, thank you. Get it going. To be thankful for what there is there. Start that way. Or we can bring that light into somebody else's misery. When we hear them go, blah, 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 this is all bad, you say, that may well be true. And what is also true is things you need to be thankful for. And what are they? And if they can't supply them, we can do that. Well, how about the bed you're sleeping in? How about the clothes you have to wear? How about the food you have? How about the medical personnel who's brought you to the way you are right now? How about the healing that your body is doing? How about the fact that the sun came up this morning, even if you can't see it? How about? Think about those things. And it can change our attitude. Be grateful. Then it says, do not quash the Spirit. Well, why would we do that? How can we do that? You see, when somebody's in misery, let's say they're brokenhearted about a loved one. And they're tempted to feel good about something. And I go, I feel guilty about feeling good. I don't know if you ever felt that yourself or seen it, but I've seen it, How can I laugh when I'm in such misery? I know that when I prepare for funerals, we get in and we get people to come in and ask them to talk about the departed. And they tell me all sorts of stuff, and somebody comes up with a funny story and they all laugh. It breaks the tension. What I try to do at a funeral is based on what they heard, try to say something about that in the light of the good news that comes through Scripture. And if I can find a way to do it, sometimes I can. I'll say something which makes the people just bust out in laughter. You know what it does? It breaks the tension. And people start thinking not just of their own loss, but of the person and what a joy they were in their life. How a great thing if we can do that, because not quashing the Spirit admits the truth that the Spirit lives within and it comes forth. It bursts forth. It wants to bring us to life. It wants us to heal. And yes, there is grieving that goes on, and in that grieving there's also healing. And healing can come by letting that Spirit come forth to the point where we are grateful. There's a healing that comes with that. When we are grateful for the person we've lost, it comes to a point where we can finally say that. It comes to a point where we can laugh a little bit more. It's healing. Don't quash the Spirit. And the last thing it says, test everything. Retain what is good and refrain from what is evil. Test everything. Well, let's say we're feeling bad and we decide, I think I'll feel better if I go shopping. we get home, spend some money for something we don't really need or want, we find out it didn't work. Okay, you tested that, don't do that anymore. Or maybe you're feeling so miserable, you think, oh, I'll just drink myself into oblivion. So you go ahead and try that. Wake up the next morning with the worst hangover you can think about. All right? Tried that, doesn't work. Let's try something else. Let's try having a dinner with a good friend. Let's try renting a funny movie and laughing, even against our will. Let's try praying a little more, seeing what Scripture has to say to us. Let's try something else. Retain what is good. For in our darkness we need light. John the Baptist says, I came to testify to the light. I am not the light, but I testify to it. We need that done for us. We need to be able to do that for someone else, to bring the light of Christ, the good news, to somebody else. Not that we are the light, but we let that light shine through us by our presence, by our love, by our reaching out to someone else and being with them. So that we all might learn and be able to rejoice a little bit more, trusting in the God who made us, and the God who made us for an abundant life.